From Ticker, this is Black Belt Leader. Here's Karen Gately.
Welcome to Black Belt Leader. I'm Karen Gately, founder of Corporate Dojo. On the show today, we'll be discussing change management, unquestionably one of the biggest challenges a lot of leaders face. Later on, we'll be joined by Gavin Arnott from changeTECH. Gav will be here to share his views on why change management can be so difficult to get right and the essential role that leaders at every level of the organisation play. But first, we're joined by Karen Ferris, Organisational Change Rebel with a cause. Karen is a facilitator, a mentor, a coach and trainer, and her passion is helping organisations thrive in the face of volatile, uncertain and complex change. So Karen, welcome to the show. It's great to have you
Karen.
here.
Good to be here.
So, Karen, help us to understand, your view that there needs to be a fundamental shift around change management in order for us to be getting it right. Help us to understand what that looks like in your view.
Yeah, traditionally change management's been very linear. And that's the approach, and the frameworks have all been based on this linear approach, on this 3-step, let's plan, let's make the change, and then let's freeze and have some stability. Well, when change is, as you've said, volatile and uncertain and complex and constant, there is no stability anymore. Yeah. So we're living in a world of, it's become more agile, it's more, the speed of change is happening. So the mindset needs to change, that we need to take organisational change into that rapidly changing world. So it needs to operate faster. So we need to embed ourselves into that agile delivery of change that's taking place, and start leveraging things like, backlogs and demos and the retrospectives, and get absolutely entrenched into those ceremonies, if you like, and not be on the outside of those deliveries, which is where organisational change is sort of sitting at the moment.
So you've come from a technology background originally, so grew up trying to get technology systems, processes, etc. to work, and obviously getting people to connect with that is essential. Obviously now you're working with organisations well beyond the technology space. What would you say are, some of the things you've seen in broader business change that are really holding organisations back? Obviously we've got this old mindset, but what does that actually look like in practice? What are leaders doing wrong, do you think?
I think leaders are still very much, not everybody, and there's like everything, there's a spectrum, but there's leaders who are still operating in a command and control approach, are still micromanaging. And when organisations need to respond rapidly to change, whether that's driven by, startups and competition, increased consumer and customer demand, organisations have to be creative, they have to innovate. And when you've got micromanagement, do it my way when I tell you, then innovation is killed. And those organisations are just not going to remain relevant. And they're going to feel the pain, and they're going to feel it soon.
So what I'm hearing you really say is effective change management actually starts, obviously, with a mindset, but then a willingness to actually challenge what we do.
Absolutely.
And challenge the status quo.
Absolutely.
How do you think leaders can actually help people to get on board, to actually start to, what are some of the steps we can take to get people to be engaged with the change, to overcome some of the fears and to actually be part of it?
Absolutely, great question. I think we have to take the fundamental mindset shift is that change is everyone's business. It can't be like when I go into an organisation and say, well, you're organisational change management practitioners, and then you say it's those two people sitting over there, and you're talking of an organisation of maybe 10,000 people or even 5,000. Well, therein lies the problem straight away. Change cannot be just the role of those two people. It has to be everyone's business across the organisation to drive change. And I use the analogy to try and bring it home about organisational change being structured a bit like a soccer team. Being from Liverpool in the UK, it's my passion. But I talk about managers, coaches and players. And if you think about players on a team, every game they play is different. The pitch, the location, the opposition, the weather, the supporters, and they don't resist change. They say, game on. They're resilient in the face of it. And change happens during the game as well. So the managers are the change management professionals who need to step back from doing and become enablers of change across an organisation. And then the coaches are those that are making sure that the gameplay is being played as intended, the strategy set by the org change professionals. And those coaches are at every level across the organisation. So they're what we traditionally call our change champions or our change advocates, who we've never really enabled or given the capability. It's been lip service. Yes, we have a network, but you talk to these people and they've no idea what they're supposed to be doing. So we need that enabled resourced change network across the organisation. It's the only way change is actually going to happen at the speed we need it to.
Absolutely, and what I'm hearing you point to there is, a lot of organisations, in my experience, treat change management as an event or a set of processes. But exactly as you've just pointed out, for a lot of organisations, change can be unpredictable. It can be almost every day. It's that agility of mindset, that open-mindedness, that culture of ambition, where we're constantly trying to keep ahead of the pack. That is important. So what, in your experience, are some of the things that successful leaders do to create a cultural environment where people are up for change, where they actually want to be part of that, as we're saying?
I think it's we need to change the focus from talking about resistance to change to resilience in the face of it. Because generally people don't resist change when it's done with them. They resist it when it's done to them. And leaders need to focus on, we often focus on the how, the what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And we forget to focus or have the conversation about the why. The why is the most powerful conversation. This is why we're doing it. This is why we're asking you to change. And if we don't, this is the implications. And people generally, when they have that conversation with them and have the conversation, it's not communication, it's conversation, it's two-way. People will be on board. They'll get the what's in it for me, which we've talked about forever, but it's the why conversation. And we need to talk about leaders need to focus on resilience in the face of that constant change, which is all about, leading with, I know people roll their eyes, but it's about leading with empathy and compassion. It's about psychological safety, so people will speak up and they will challenge your decisions, and that's the only way we make sure we're doing the right thing. So there's an environment where people feel safe to do that without repercussion, and constructive conflict is encouraged.
Absolutely. Because again, as you're pointing out, a lot of people get to a place where they're experiencing change fatigue. I'm just done. Is this change ever going to actually end? Are we ever actually going to conclude what we set out to achieve? And for a lot of people, the answer is probably not.
No,
you're going to keep, evolving and challenging what we do. So what are some of those practical guidelines or tips, again, from your point of view, around building resilience? How do we actually help our people to be more resilient?
One of the things I work with organisations, and I have a program work called Unleash the Resiliator, which is a bit quirky, just to try and get some interest. And the Resiliator, from an individual perspective, has superpowers. So things like the listener, the collaborator, the problem solver, the regulator, which is all about emotion and intelligence. So giving individuals the resources to say, I'm really feeling doubting myself or my ability to get on board with this change. So a resource that says, this is what self-belief is about. How can I increase my self-efficacy? What are the tips to help me collaborate better? And just giving people the resources, but then also equipping leaders to say, how do I spot the signs of low resilience in my team? And then what can I do about it to make sure that, I identify it, and then I have the right conversations with the people. Have they got access to the right resources to enable them to be resilient?
So what are those signs that I'm looking for? How do I actually identify, okay, there's some coaching that needs to go on here with an individual or a team? It's
initially those changes in behaviour that are usually out of character for a person, so they're becoming a bit more irritable, they get more criticising things, their language is changing, and it's about reaching out and saying, we all know the "Are you okay?" But are you okay? I've noticed this change in behaviour, but then equipping the leaders to have the right conversation if someone says, actually, no, I'm not. And there's a fear at the moment I'm feeling with leaders that we have all the publicity about are you okay, but they're scared to ask the question because they don't know what to say if someone says, actually, no, I'm not. And the conversation I have with leaders is, you don't have to be a general practitioner, you're not a medical person, you're not a psychiatrist, you're not a psychologist, nor do we expect you to be so. Just ask the question and say to the person, do you want to go for a walk? or do you want to have a coffee?
Yeah.
Because you probably know what the best thing for that person is, because they're part of your team generally.
Yeah.
And then help them reach out to the resources they might need, and then check in on a regular basis, offer them support. How are you going? How are you going?
Absolutely agree. We had an episode not so long ago around mental health, and really how you do approach somebody and have that conversation when they're struggling. And again, our advice, and we had some experts on the show sharing their advice as well, is that as you've said, we don't need to be a psychologist or a doctor to then have an empathetic conversation and work through with somebody what are some of those fears, what are some of those hesitations that's making change really stressful. Because again, I think that often for people not knowing what the future looks like, what does this mean for me, am I up for it, the list of fears and concerns and stresses that people carry through periods of change.
And I think it's also having the conversations, Karen, about the fact that change is constant, and that if we have a shift in direction, it's not because there's incompetent leaders who made the wrong decision. It's that something actually has changed outside the organisation, like the competition's changed, or we've got some technology that's going to disrupt us. And the direction we were going in was okay yesterday, but actually today we've got to change.
That's right.
And we've got to shift, and it's the why. Why are we suddenly changing direction, and why is this new direction important for us? So it's changing that mindset that it's not a 3-year goal we're probably heading for now. It's probably, a 3-month goal. We've got to keep moving and changing and continually shifting.
And again, I think that's where the agile mindset from the technology world has made a big difference in the change space, hasn't it? In terms of the time frame that we're actually thinking about.
But agile now, or becoming more agile, because we say agile's not a noun. You don't do agile. You become more agile. It's one of my, I have a bee on my bonnet about this one. But it's about the whole organisation has to become more agile. And it's not just IT, it's HR, it's marketing, it's legal, it's everybody has to be on the same side.
And as we pointed out, that's a mindset, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So change Karen,
of thinking. It's been fantastic having you on the show. Obviously, the people out there might want to know more about you and how they can gain access to your support. How can everyone find you?
KarenFerris.com, www.karenferris.com. That's simple.
Well, thank you very much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
We're going to take a short break, and when we return, Gavin Arnott will be joining us.
This is Ticker.
From Ticker, this is Black Belt Leader. Here's Karen Gately.
Welcome back to Black Belt Leader. Joining us now is Gavin Arnott. Gavin is the Director of changeTECH and has been working in change management for many years. He delivers organisational change management solutions for transformation and technology programs, and I can't wait to get some insight from him. So Gav, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
It's great to have the opportunity to have a chat to you, taking what we spoke to Karen about to the next level around the roles that people need to actually play to make change work. Because again, we can map out the change process, we can have all of the tools in the toolkit, but as we know, unless people are playing their roles and taking the steps that they need to, then the value of that toolkit is clearly undermined.
Totally.
So, I'd be really interested to hear your view. That start at the top. What is the role we hear about the executive sponsor?
Absolutely.
What should they actually be doing beyond
Absolutely.
putting their name on the project?
Absolutely.
Plan?
Look, Karen, I use the ProSci framework, and their research has indicated over the last 20 years that the number one contributor to project success is the right sponsor and sponsor involvement.
Yeah.
And so what a sponsor is going to do here is a sponsor is going to talk about the strategic reasons for change.
Yeah.
The sponsor is going to stand up in front of the organisation and own this change and lead this change. And they're going to continually throughout the course of the change come back and talk to the employee group about why are we doing this change? What's the reason for it?
Reminding them
why
we're on this path.
Continually building that, opening up that pathway for the project team and the business leaders to then implement the tactical change itself. So the sponsor is really important. A number of projects that I'm working on at the moment, I've got a sponsor in particular who just really wants to own it, wants to understand why we're doing it, drive it, and tell people what they have to do to make this a success, giving the time, giving the resources. And I think an executive sponsor really has to lead. And look, I think that's where people get confused around change management, the role of change managers and the role of change leaders. I'm a change manager. I come in and help leaders lead. I give them the tools, I give them the framework, I give them everything they need to be successful. But they have to lead it.
They've got to face up.
I can't stand up and talk. I mean, I can, as you can see, I love it.
Exactly.
But I can't do it. Because
you can't speak on
I
their
haven't
behalf.
got that credibility. I haven't got that relationship with the employee group. And so I need the sponsor in particular. That number one success is a key sponsor.
Making it matter, again,
making it matter.
I see that time and time again where, so-called sponsors will say, this matters, it's an important project, everyone's working really hard, but then they're not actually getting in the trench in the appropriate moments to remove the roadblocks or to, create the capacity or the resource to make it doable.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, a sponsor really needs to build that coalition at the senior leadership team, really needs to build that momentum and that understanding, because we often draw on these big transformation initiatives. You draw on resources throughout the organisation. If it's one sponsor in one part of the organisation, they have to be talking to their colleagues about, are we all aligned? Do we all understand why we're doing this? Are you all committed to giving the resources required? Often we talk about, where change has got too much and there's too much change going on in an organisation. One way to tell that there is too much change going on is that the senior leadership team can't align. The senior leadership team can't give the resources. That's where I look at that and just go, hang on a minute, there's probably too much going on.
And look, again, in my view, I have this conversation with CEOs all the time. Whether it's change management, whether it's culture, it doesn't matter what it is that we're trying to achieve. Executives need to first and foremost see themselves as a member of the executive team, not their own division. Otherwise, we create these silos, which again makes change incredibly if not impossible at times.
Really tough. Really tough.
So obviously, change leaders, people who are specialists in change management and are brought into the organisation or are a part of the organisation, should I say. How do you see their role? Because as you've said, they're not the sponsor, they're not the one that necessarily needs to be doing that marketing and that branding at that vision level. What should the change leader be doing? Look,
so as you've rightly said, Karen, there's numerous roles through a change process, right? So normally you'll have a project manager, and the project manager will lead the technical side of the change, whether it be a transformation initiative, org restructure, or a technical solution. You've got your PM. Then you have a change resource. And the change resource is all about the tactical actions that need to be done. So communication plan, training, impact assessments. These are all stakeholder analysis. These are all the things that a change tactical person should be doing. And then it's all about the conversation you then have with the business leaders. So the change person has to then sit down with the business leaders and say, this is the message we need you to communicate, this is when we need you to communicate it, and this is why you need to communicate, and here's the content.
Yeah.
So a business leader that I'm finding in organisations is often really busy running the operations, day to day, just consistent, and they need a change resource there to help them just get all that information and then coordinate it so they know what to do and when to do it. And so a change resource is really working in concert with these people throughout the organisation and just making sure that they're aligned and that they're doing the right things. And I think the hard part here in change management is coordinating everyone. It's just bringing everyone together and leading in the same direction. Yeah. But a good change resource should be doing all these tactical action plans. I don't want to be up front. I'm not the person who wants to stand there and take the leadership. You are the operational leader of the business. Lead your business.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I will give you all the tools. I'll give you everything you need to do that. And I think so. That's the role that a good change
What happens
person
if I,
is.
as an organisational leader, don't have a change expert internally? And you talk about, for example, an impact assessment. So there's a potential change. What are some of the things I need to be thinking about? What impacts might there be that I need to keep on my radar?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So look, change management operates in the world of organisations, and you've got to step back and keep it really simple. What makes an organisation tick? Processes, org structure, roles, responsibilities, tools, systems, beliefs, mindsets, policies. These are all the elements, and I think you could probably make 10 or more. And a leader has to step back and say, which one of these elements are we touching or changing? Right? So keep it really simple. I'm changing a process. Okay, well, what's the process today? And then when you know the process today, well, what part of it is changing and what is it going to be tomorrow? Or what's the policy we're changing today? What's it going to be tomorrow? And I
what
think,
does that mean?
And what does it mean? So you've just got to step back, keep it simple, and then analyse what the change is, and then how does it apply to people? What behaviour do people have to do differently tomorrow? That's what you've got to get. Do they know how to do it? You know, do they know it's coming? Are we going to catch them by surprise? Change management really is there to keep the organisation ticking smoothly, you know, just so it continues to deliver to customers and stakeholders.
And keep evolving.
Keep evolving.
And keep improving.
Absolutely.
And look, absolutely agree with that. And some of the things that I think leaders can overlook, and I'd be interested in your view on this, are some of the emotional aspects of change. So what does it actually mean? Well, I'm no longer going to be sitting next to Gav every day, and we've been doing that for the last 5 years, and we actually have a way of working together. Or, you know, my job is actually now going to end up in another department and part of having a new boss. And often we don't spend enough time reflecting on what does that mean for the individual and how do we actually take them down that path so that they come on the journey.
And look, this is the reason why I use a particular framework. For me, it works well. So I use the ProSci framework, and a lot of viewers would have heard about ADKAR, awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, reinforcement, and it's about taking the individual on that journey. Organisational change is based on an individual change. And organisational outcomes are achieved through the collective results of those changes, right? So I always have to come back to the individual. And I always have to help the individual transition through the change. Awareness, desire, and coach and lead. And it's, as you said previously, it's never just the linear process. Sometimes I loop back on many and have this conversation about why are we changing? Do you know what you need to do? Have you been trained? Have you practiced? And sometimes I just have to continually loop back and make sure that everyone's up to speed with what's taking place. But you have to take the individual on the journey. And I think in organisational changes, large ones, we forget about sometimes the individual.
Look, I think that is a brilliant point to make, because I couldn't agree more that, you know, it's the individuals that collectively make up this organisation. And, you know, in my experience, large organisations especially can take a very high level whole of workforce approach, you know, which again leads me to the roles that people need to play. What is, you know, every team member's job around change management? Because, you know, again, in my experience, sometimes it's the peer sitting in a team who can make the biggest difference to helping someone to go on that journey.
Absolutely.
So,
So I think in that regard is that employees, team members all have a role. Ask questions. If you don't know what's happening, if you're concerned, All we ask is that you raise your hand and ask.
Yeah.
We'll tell you where you can get the information. I'll make sure that you've got the right information through your leaders, but you've got to ask.
Yeah.
And leaders, managers of business units have to lead,
Yeah.
have to continually just sense where their employees are at.
Yeah.
Who's not coping?
Yeah.
Who is coping?
Yeah.
Flag it, raise it. Then
Yeah,
I can start to deal with it.
coaching
Who's coaching conversation?
Yeah.
You know, and just helping people realize that this is a part of change. It feels uncomfortable. You go through that change curve. Yeah, sometimes I'll go to despair. Sometimes I'll have anger. But you've just got to work through it, and we will help you work through it. We'll walk that journey with you.
What's your advice to leaders if people, are nervous about the change, but they don't actually have all of the answers to give people? So people want this information, they want this insight, but they don't have it. What do we do?
I've been in many situations like that for industrial reasons. Managers maybe can't say.
Yeah.
And so all I would advise in those situations is tell the truth.
Yeah.
Tell the truth, which is because we're following a certain protocol, we don't have all the answers. We're going through a consultation process, and that takes 3 months. I think what people need to know is the truth. They need to know the time frame. They need to know when they can expect an answer.
Yeah.
And that you need to keep on showing up. Just don't turn up one day and then disappear for the next 3 months.
Yeah.
You can't do that. There's no trust in that.
Yeah.
What there is you've got to walk this journey with them.
Yeah. Absolutely. And again, expressing empathy for
Absolutely.
What some of those natural fears
Absolutely.
are. Again, I've worked with organisations where people are sincerely concerned about their capacity to get up the learning curve.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, around making sure that people have the information, etc. What's your view of training? How do we actually make sure that people have the skills or the knowledge that they need?
Can I say, first and foremost, pet hate, PowerPoint is not enough. No. Right? So PowerPoint is not enough. When it comes to training, ultimately you need to practice. And you need to practice in the real world environment. Yes. If I was learning to swim, I need to practice swimming.
Yes.
So if I'm putting
PowerPoint
on swimming is not going to work. No. So any new role, any new system, any new tool, you have to allow your employees to practice and leave enough time in the project plan for that to happen. If we don't, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, fantastic. Gavin, it's been great to have you on the show. I really do appreciate you being here. So again, how can our viewers find out more about you?
Absolutely, changetech.com.au.
Perfect.
There it is.
That's great. Thank you again to both of our guests. It's great to have them on here sharing their views on change management. Next time on Black Belt Leader, we'll be looking at corporate health programs. If you want to learn about the real value of organisations investing in health programs, join us then. If there are topics you'd like us to explore, please get in touch via our website, corporatedojo.com, or via our social media channels. Thanks for joining us, and remember, you choose. Will you be an ordinary or an awesome leader of your people?
This is Ticker, your new source for news.